There's this really interesting story in the Old Testament that sheds a lot of light on the character of God, especially how he acted within the Old Testament, but I've never heard anyone really talk about it. It's the story of when the Ark of God is stolen. So to catch you up, especially if you haven't read the Old Testament, I'm going to give you a little bit of background. God chose one man hundreds of years prior to this event. His name was Abraham. And he basically made a promise to him that he would bless him, and from his sons would produce a nation, and all the people of the earth would be blessed by his lineage. He would have descendants that were more numerous than the sand of the seashore. So God blesses Abraham, and from Abraham comes the nation of Israel. The nation of Israel goes through a lot of pretty incredible things. They were enslaved in Egypt. God brings them out using plagues, walking through the Red Sea. They go through the wilderness for 40 years. They come into the promised land that God had promised to Abraham. They're living in the promised land, and they serve God, then they don't serve God. And they serve God, then they don't serve God. And they serve God, and they don't serve God. And whenever they were living in the desert before they came into the promised land, God established a way for his presence to be among them. To do this, he built an ark, and he placed it inside a tabernacle. We might think of it as like a mobile temple, but it was basically like a really fancy tent. And inside that really fancy tent was the ark, and only one man a year could come into the presence of God, which was the ark. But they would also, when they were in battle, God would have them bring it out before them, and whenever they would move camp, they would march before them. So it was just like their way of having God physically among them. I wouldn't want you to think of this like an idol, because they weren't worshiping the ark, they were worshiping the fact that God would come, and it was basically like symbolizing God to them. But it wasn't, they didn't think of it as God. Like an idol, whenever they would build an idol, they thought of it literally as God. So that should catch you up on what the ark is and the significance of it. So Israel is in the promised land, and they're losing a battle. They don't know what to do. So what do? They go and get the ark, and they bring it out into battle, and they lose the battle, and the ark is stolen from them. This is unfathomable to the Israelite, because during this time, and I've talked about this before on the channel, but during this time, people, when they would go into battle, it was like, okay, I'm going to fight you, you're going to fight me, but my God is going to fight your God, and they're going to clash. And so whoever wins the battle down here is actually demonstrating who has the more powerful God. So Israel's, just distraught because they've lost. It shows that their God lost. They lost the ark. They don't have a way to become in the presence of God anymore. And what's so significant about this is that God is demonstrating that he is the one that wins battles, not the Israelites, and that the Israelites need him, not the other way around. And he does this by whenever they take the ark into their own land, they place it before their God, which is like a big statue called Dagon, and at night, the statue falls over, and they don't really know what happened, so they set it back up. But the next day, it falls over again during the night, and it's destroyed. See, God is winning the battle without the army. So the people are like freaking out, so they send the ark away. It goes into another Philistine city, and everyone starts getting tumors. They freak out. They're like, we don't even want this. Send it away. So they come up with this great plan to put the ark onto a wagon with some cattle, and they basically set the cattle free to go where they want. Well, the cattle bring it back to Israel, showing that it does belong to Israel. It is where God wants it to be, and the animals are going to obey God. So they take it back to Israel. They sacrifice the cattle. They use the wagon wood as the fuel for the fire. Just a really beautiful picture. But then 70 people in Israel die because they try to look into the Ark of the Covenant. See, God is demonstrating throughout this story that he's the one in control. He's the one in charge. And he's the one that we need to be submitting to. It's not about who you were born to. It's about what you do for God and how you're acting with him. I think it really sets up characteristics of God, because a lot of times people talk about how the Old Testament had a lot of genocide and all this sort of stuff in it, which I think is kind of mischaracteristic. But what God's demonstrating here is that it's not just he's serving one people and forgetting all the others. He's treating everyone on earth the same way, by showing them that if you're just going to take my art and use it for your own personal gain, then that's not going to work out for you. Anyways, I hope this makes sense, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments of this video. I read through the Bible every single day, and I want you to too. So to better help you with that, in the description of this video, there's a Bible plan that I'm currently doing with this series, and there's also a playlist of all the videos that I've made in this series. If you want to see more videos like this, be sure to hit the subscribe, and I'll see you back here tomorrow.